Few actors command a screen with such quiet power that a single glance can silence an entire room. For over 6 decades, one man became synonymous with the American West, not through shouting or spectacle, but through stillness and an intensity that burned beneath the surface. His poncho became as iconic as his squint, his silence more dangerous than any dialogue. Clint Eastwood didn't just star in westerns, he rewrote the rules of the genre itself. From an unlikely beginning on television to an international gamble that changed everything. This is the story of how one actor became the face of the western and why his legacy remains untouchable. But it all started with a struggling TV actor who almost never made it to the big screen. Rise of an unlikely cowboy. Hollywood wasn't looking for quiet intensity in the 1950s. It wanted bold voices and theatrical presence. Yet a tall, soft-spoken actor named Clint Eastwood was grinding through bit parts and rejections, barely scraping by in an industry that didn't seem to have room for him. His big break came not from a movie studio, but from television, when he landed a role as Rowdy Yates on Rawhide in 1959. The show ran for 8 seasons, giving him steady work, but little recognition beyond the small screen. What set Clint apart wasn't dramatic range or commanding speeches. It was something subtler. He moved with natural ease, spoke only when necessary, and carried himself with an authenticity that felt more real than polished. While other actors performed, Clint simply existed on screen. His understated presence hinted at depths beneath the surface, a quiet strength that didn't need to announce itself. Audiences sensed it, even if they couldn't quite name it yet. By the mid-1960s, Clint was still relatively unknown in film, just another television actor struggling to break into the big leagues. Few could have predicted that a controversial offer from Italy would soon transform him into one of cinema's most iconic figures. The cowboy legend was about to be born, but not in America. The Italian gamble that worked. When Sergio Leone offered Clint the lead role in a low-budget Italian western, nearly every established American actor had already turned it down. The project seemed like a career risk: foreign financing, an unknown director, and a script that broke every traditional western rule. But Clint, still hungry for film work and intrigued by the unconventional approach, decided to take the chance that nobody else wanted. A Fistful of Dollars wasn't just Italian in production, it was shot primarily in Spain, where the arid landscapes around Almeria and Madrid became the backdrop for Leone's revolutionary vision. The harsh terrain, combined with Leone's operatic style and Ennio Morricone's haunting score, created something completely unexpected. The film exploded internationally, turning Clint into a sensation across Europe and beyond. This international gamble didn't just launch Clint's film career, it redefined what a western could be. The slow pacing, moral ambiguity, and stylized violence influenced filmmakers worldwide. 2 sequels followed, For a Few Dollars More, and The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, completing the legendary trilogy. By the time American audiences caught up, Clint was already a global icon. Birth of the no-name mythology. A nameless stranger rides into town, his face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat, a tattered poncho draped over his shoulders. He speaks in clipped sentences, observes everything, and reveals nothing about his past. This wasn't just a character, it became one of cinema's most enduring archetypes. The man with no name captured audiences' imaginations and created a legend that transcended the individual movies. Every detail became instantly recognizable. The poncho that Clint reportedly never washed during filming, the narrow-eyed squint, the slow, deliberate draw, and the dangerous economy of words. He didn't need a backstory or emotional speeches to dominate the screen. His power came from what he withheld, the tension in his silence, and the lethal efficiency in his movements. Audiences leaned forward, trying to read his intentions, never quite certain if he was hero or villain. This character blueprint became the foundation for Clint's entire Western persona. The fusion of danger, mystery, and moral ambiguity created something cinema had never quite seen before. A cowboy stripped of sentimentality and repackaged as a force of nature. Decades later, filmmakers still chase this formula, trying to recapture the magic that Clint made look effortless. Master of silent intensity. The best actors know when to speak, the greatest ones know when silence says more. Clint Eastwood built an entire career on what he didn't do, stripping away the theatrical gestures that define most Western heroes. While other cowboys gave rousing speeches or wore their emotions openly, Clint's characters communicated through stillness. A raised eyebrow, a shift in posture, or a slow turn of the head could convey more threat than any monologue ever could. This minimalist approach created an entirely new kind of screen presence. Clint dominated scenes not by filling space, but by controlling it. His characters moved with deliberate economy, every gesture calculated and meaningful. The tension came from restraint. audiences watched him carefully, knowing that when he finally acted, it would be swift and decisive. His eyes did most of the work, creating layers of meaning without uttering a word. Modern actors often struggle to replicate this effect because it requires absolute confidence and precision. Too much stillness feels empty, too little breaks the spell. Clint found the perfect balance, turning understatement into an art form. His approach wasn't just a style choice. It became the gold standard for understated masculinity in cinema, influencing generations of performers who followed. Signature look fans still imitate. Before a single word is spoken, an iconic silhouette appears on screen, and everyone knows exactly who it is. Clint Eastwood's physical presence became so distinctive that fans could recognize him from posture alone. The way he wore his hat, tilted just slightly forward, the steady hands that never trembled, the relaxed yet purposeful walk that suggested confidence without arrogance, every detail contributed to a visual identity that transcended individual films. His weapon handling became legendary in its own right. Clint didn't twirl guns or show off. He drew with mechanical efficiency, treating firearms as tools rather than toys. The way he positioned his holster, the angle of his gun belt, even how he checked his ammunition became signature moves that fans study and imitate decades later. There was no wasted motion, no theatrical flourish, just pure functional grace. This lack of exaggeration separated Clint from every other Western star. He didn't look like an actor playing cowboy, he looked like the real thing. The worn leather, the dusty clothes, the weathered demeanor, all contributed to a realism that made audiences believe they were watching actual frontier justice unfold. His physical identity became so iconic that today's costume parties feature countless imitators trying to capture that unmistakable presence. Roles that crowned his genius. After conquering the international market, Clint returned to America ready to prove his Western mastery on home soil. 4 films would define this evolution and cement his status as the genre's undisputed king. High Plains Drifter introduced audiences to a supernatural avenger, a mysterious stranger who might be ghost or man, delivering justice from beyond the grave. The film's dark tone and moral ambiguity shocked viewers accustomed to traditional Western heroes. The Outlaw Josey Wales showed a different side, a man driven by loss and revenge who slowly rediscovers his humanity. Pale Rider returned to the mystical stranger archetype, this time as a preacher whose past remained shrouded in mystery, blending spiritual symbolism with classic shootout action. But Unforgiven would become his masterpiece, a brutal, honest examination of violence and its consequences. Playing an aging killer dragged back into the life he'd abandoned, Clint delivered his most mature and haunting Western performance. The film won multiple Academy Awards and proved that Westerns could be both commercially successful and artistically profound. These 4 roles demonstrated Clint's range within the genre, crowning him as Western cinema's greatest artist. From star to Western visionary. Success as an actor is one thing, controlling the entire vision is something else entirely. Clint didn't wait for permission to become a filmmaker, he simply took the leap. His directorial debut came with Play Misty for Me in 1971, a psychological thriller that showcased his instincts behind the camera. But it was High Plains Drifter in 1973 where he truly applied his style to the Western genre, creating a dark and atmospheric revenge tale that defied convention. The Outlaw Josey Wales and Pale Rider followed, each showing his growing confidence as a director. Clint brought the same minimalist philosophy from his acting into his filmmaking. Fewer takes, less rehearsal, more trust in natural instinct. He understood pacing, atmosphere, and how to let silence build tension. His films carried a distinctive tone that audiences immediately recognized. Then came Unforgiven in 1992, the culmination of decades spent mastering the Western form. The film combined everything he'd learned into a mature, morally complex masterpiece. It won 4 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Director, proving that Clint wasn't just a genre star, he was one of cinema's most important filmmakers. Hidden rules behind his style. Every great director has a philosophy, but few stick to theirs as religiously as Clint Eastwood. On his sets, lengthy rehearsals don't exist. He believes actors should come prepared and trust their instincts. First or second takes are usually the keepers because spontaneity captures truth that rehearsal kills. This approach terrifies some performers but liberates others, forcing them to stay present rather than overthinking every moment. Natural lighting became another cornerstone of his visual style. Clint avoids heavy artificial setups whenever possible, preferring the authentic look of available light. This choice grounds his westerns in realism, making dusty towns feel lived in rather than staged. Combined with minimal camera movement, this creates an atmosphere of calm observation that pulls viewers into the world. These personal rules built the unmistakable Eastwood atmosphere. His films feel patient, contemplative, and real in ways that heavily produced westerns never achieve. Crew members marvel at how quickly he works, finishing projects under budget and ahead of schedule. The efficiency isn't about cutting corners, it's about trusting the craft. Why modern westerns can't compare. Contemporary western films often feel like they're trying too hard. Flashy cinematography, rapid editing, and stylized violence that prioritizes spectacle over substance. Clint Eastwood's westerns succeed because they embrace slow tension and moral ambiguity that modern productions abandon. Where current films rush toward the next action beat, Clint lets scenes breathe, allowing character moments and atmospheric dread to build naturally. The moral clarity of many modern westerns also betrays the genre's complexity. Heroes are too heroic, villains too villainous, and conflicts resolve with convenient justice. Clint's characters exist in uncomfortable gray zones, men capable of violence who aren't entirely good or evil, just human. This ambiguity makes his films feel more honest than sanitized contemporary versions. Directors still attempt to recapture Clint's tone, but most fail because they miss the essential ingredient: restraint. They add where Clint subtracts and explain where he suggests. His westerns work because they trust the audience to understand subtext. Modern filmmakers could learn from his approach, but few possess the confidence to let silence do the heavy lifting. Scenes that cemented his icon status. Certain moments transcend their films and become permanent fixtures in cultural memory. The final standoff in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly remains one of cinema's most iconic sequences. Three men circling in a dusty graveyard, Ennio Morricone's score building to a fever pitch, Clint's eyes narrowing as the camera cuts faster until violence explodes in an instant. Filmmakers still study this scene's rhythm and tension. High Plains Drifter opens with one of the most unsettling Western entrances ever filmed. Clint rides into town through shimmering heat waves, his identity obscured. The cabin shootout in the Outlaw Josey Wales showcases tactical efficiency mixed with desperate survival. Clint methodically eliminating threats while protecting innocent people depending on him. But Unforgiven's final confrontation might be his most powerful scene. An aging William Money walks into a saloon, soaked from rain, facing down the men who tortured his friend. What follows isn't heroic. It's ugly, brutal, and terrifying, stripping away romantic notions about gunfighter legends. These moments became the measuring stick for all Western scenes. Themes that made him timeless. Beneath the gunfights and dusty landscapes, Clint Eastwood's westerns always wrestled with deeper questions about what it means to be human. Justice wasn't simple in his films. It was messy, personal, and often indistinguishable from revenge. His characters didn't ride into town to restore order. They came seeking something more complicated, driven by wounds that wouldn't heal and debts that couldn't be repaid. This moral ambiguity forced audiences to question their own definitions of right and wrong. Loneliness permeated every frame of Clint's Western work. His characters were isolated figures, disconnected from society and haunted by their pasts. Even when surrounded by others, they remained fundamentally alone, carrying burdens no one else could understand. Guilt and trauma weren't just backstory elements. They were active forces shaping every decision and every act of violence that his characters couldn't escape. Redemption became the thread connecting his greatest films, though it never came easily or completely. Clint's cowboys couldn't erase their sins through heroic acts. They could only try to do better with whatever time remained. This emotional weight gave his westerns a resonance that pure action films never achieve, making them feel human, layered, and ultimately unforgettable. The Eastwood visual language. Words tell stories, but images create worlds, and Clint Eastwood understood this better than most directors. His visual style relies on what isn't said, what isn't shown, and what lingers in the empty spaces between action. Long silences dominate his films, not as gaps, but as active elements building tension and forcing audiences to lean forward, waiting for the inevitable explosion. These quiet moments feel heavier than dialogue ever could. Wide landscapes became characters in their own right under Clint's direction. Sweeping shots of empty deserts, rugged mountains, and endless horizons establish scale and isolation, dwarfing human conflicts against nature's indifference. His camera rarely rushed, preferring patient observation over frenetic movement. Music, when used at all, served the story rather than manipulating emotions. often disappearing entirely to let natural sounds fill the void. This visual signature created an atmosphere that other filmmakers struggle to replicate. The pacing feels almost meditative, the restraint nearly hypnotic. Every shot serves a purpose. Every silence carries meaning. This language transcended borders, influencing directors worldwide, proving that cinema's most powerful moments often come from what we don't see or hear. Why Clint has a lifelong cult following. Decades after his first Western, fans still obsess over Clint Eastwood, with an intensity reserved for true icons. Part of this devotion stems from mystery. His characters never explained themselves, never sought approval, and never broke character to wink at the audience. This enigmatic quality made him fascinating rather than familiar, someone viewers wanted to understand but never fully could. The less he revealed, the more audiences projected onto him. His brand of masculinity resonated across generations without feeling dated or performative. Clint's characters weren't invincible superheroes. They were competent, self-reliant men who accepted consequences and kept their word. This grounded approach to strength, quiet, controlled, and earned rather than boasted, appealed to people tired of loud, flashy heroes. His consistency created a reliable screen persona that fans trusted completely. Beyond the Western genre, Clint's characters embodied timeless values: integrity, resilience, loyalty, and the willingness to stand alone when necessary. His films treated audiences like adults capable of handling moral complexity. This respect for viewer intelligence, combined with his unshakable authenticity, built a fan base that spans ages and cultures, ensuring his legacy endures long after most action stars fade. Secrets, myths, and unknown details. Behind every legend lies a collection of smaller stories that fans love discovering and sharing. One of the most famous tales involves Clint's iconic poncho from the Dollars trilogy. Reportedly, he never had it cleaned during the entire production, believing the dirt and grime added authenticity to his character's roughness. Whether completely true or slightly embellished, the story perfectly captures his commitment to realism over Hollywood polish. Clint's improvisational skills contributed to some of his most memorable moments. Lines that became iconic were often created on set rather than written in the script, born from his instinct for what felt natural in the moment. His preference for minimal rehearsal wasn't laziness. It was a deliberate choice to capture spontaneous, genuine reactions. Directors and co-stars quickly learned that Clint's first instinct was usually his best. Lesser-known facts add depth to his legend. His insistence on practical effects over elaborate stunts, his habit of eating the same lunch every day on set, and his ability to remember every crew member's name on large productions. These small details, combined with behind-the-scenes stories from cast and crew, transformed Clint from movie star into living legend. Fans don't just admire his performances, they're fascinated by the man behind the mystique. Legacy of the last true cowboy. When film historians discuss the Western genre, every conversation eventually returns to Clint Eastwood, not as a footnote, but as the defining figure who shaped its modern form. For more than half a century, his influence touched every aspect of Western storytelling, from visual style to moral complexity to the very definition of what a cowboy could be. Other actors played cowboys. Clint became the archetype against which all others are measured. His impact extended beyond performance into filmmaking itself. The directing choices he pioneered, minimal takes, natural lighting, patient pacing, became the template for serious Western cinema. Young directors still study his films, trying to understand how he created such powerful atmosphere with apparent simplicity. His willingness to deconstruct Western myths in Unforgiven gave permission for the genre to mature and explore darker truths about violence and heroism. Clint Eastwood isn't just part of Western history. He is Western history. His characters define the modern Western hero, his films set the aesthetic standard, and his career demonstrated that the genre could evolve without losing its soul. Long after the final credits roll, his influence will continue shaping how frontier stories are told. From a struggling television actor to the most iconic Western figure in cinema history, Clint Eastwood redefined the genre. His quiet intensity and visual storytelling transformed frontier tales into timeless explorations of justice and redemption. Whether as the man with no name or the aging killer in Unforgiven, he created characters that audiences will remember forever. As a director, Clint proved Westerns could be artistically profound, winning Academy Awards while staying true to his minimalist philosophy. His influence shaped generations of filmmakers and set him apart from every other figure in the genre. Clint Eastwood didn't just participate in Western history, he became its living embodiment, the last true cowboy whose legacy will endure as long as cinema exists. If you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button and subscribe for more cinema secrets. What's your favorite Clint Eastwood Western? Drop your thoughts in the comments.